All right, here we go. All right. We are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Bo Crater. I'm the moderator for this session, which I'm really excited about. Two friends of mine, Carl Deasing from DNL Omnimedia, co-founder of DNL Omnimedia and managing director, who started DNL Omnimedia, a Blackbaud services partner, with Joe Landsman, also on the phone today, also co-founder, DNL Omnimedia's director of technology. So Carl and Joe have been working with Blackbaud technology for going on over 20 years, and their session today is AI and stewardship. So a very popular session. Very popular topic, this developer conference, AI. They're going to be focused on the donor experience and work they're doing with customers. So just friendly reminder, put the questions in the Q&A. They'll leave about 10 minutes after the demo today to address questions, and we'll make sure any questions in the Q&A get addressed. So with that in mind, Carl and Joe, I'll turn things over to you, and I'll be watching the chat and the Q&A, make sure we get all our questions ready for the Q&A. So looking forward to it.
Yes, great to meet everyone. Thank you, Bo, for the introduction. Looking forward to talking to everybody today. We're going to get out of the slides very quickly, but just a quick kind of overview of what we're going to be doing today. I'll jump through into the agenda. So kind of the first thing, we'll talk about harnessing AI for stewardship, how AI-powered stewardship integrates seamlessly with Blackbaud's Luminate Online and Razor's Edge NXT. Creating a powerful new donor interaction channel, which is kind of the whole point of this, creating a new interface for your donors and the organization to interact through. Behind the scenes of Steward AI. So this is a dev conference. So unlike a traditional demo, we're going to try and talk about the tech stuff, how we're building it out, how we're actually creating and enhancing these solutions for our client base. And of course, obviously happy to take your questions throughout. Joe, who's kind of leading the development team on this solution, is on the call as well. So he's more than happy to answer some tech questions as they come up, either in the tech session or if something's timely. We're happy to answer a quick question if we can as we run through the demo. And then kind of the live demo will show you some of the rules that power the AI experience. And we'll kind of do a guided walkthrough showcasing some of those rules, and then also showing you the interactive donor chat experience in action. As Bo mentioned, I'm Carl Deasing, co-founder of DNL Omnimedia, and I've got with me Joseph Landsman, my co-founder as well, and like I said, head of the tech piece. Feel free to say hi, Joe, and I'll move.
Hello, everyone.
Yep. And so for me, volunteering, and I know for Joe, volunteering and being involved in organizations is an important thing. We only work with nonprofit clients, right? Just like everyone on the call today, we're all contributing in our own ways to our individual organizations' missions. I volunteer with the Center for Performing Arts in Rhinebeck and currently serve as a volunteer president of the board of directors. So sometimes I get to experience the business side, not just the tech side of nonprofits. So always a great way to learn and give back to the community. Joe's also very passionate about veterans causes and used to work with veterans nonprofit organizations before we co-founded DNL together. So that's kind of the agenda. That's kind of who we are. The last slide here that I'm going to share with everybody is really just kind of the architecture overview. And this is just going to set the stage before we get into the demo portion. But basically on the left here, you see a donor chat interface. You see the code and the logic and the productized services that we've built in Steward AI. We're running that on AWS Lambda stack. It's communicating not only to the donor chat interface, which we built for this demo today, as well as what we're building ongoing as products and services for our clients. We utilize OpenAI's models to provide some of that natural language support. So makes it more human-like than a traditional decision tree-based bot type of experience. And then where it really gets all the data and adds the power and creates the donor experiences, whether you're a Razor's Edge NXT client or a Blackbaud Luminate Online client, or you're both, it utilizes that data that you have on file for that donor via the Sky APIs. And specifically, Steward AI's logic will scope the interface to the individual donor, right? So we can utilize the client-side login capabilities of Illuminate Online, or we have a way to authenticate users on the NXT side so that we know they're only able to access their data and talk about their own data that um, they have on file with that organization. So specifically donation history, what's my address, my phone number, all those types of bio data, constituent codes, et cetera, right, over time. And it's configurable, right? So each client would have a different type of experience. What would you want this bot to do? But mainly, we're trying to use the power of AI here to not only provide some of those, older bot-like interactions, give you your donor history, but act as a steward and recommend ways you can be involved, generate more impact for you. And the way we kind of position it with our client base is it's a virtual gift officer for some of those low and mid-level donor groups, where you traditionally can't put a gift officer on those prospects. So it gives you another avenue and another channel. And as we'll talk about later, it'll also log these interactions, and it can log the interaction in Blackbaud's Luminate Online, as well as Blackbaud's Razor's Edge NXT. So I'll stop sharing there, so this way I can kind of get into the demo portion here and get out of the slides here. So feel free again if you're popping questions in. We'll try and keep note of them. If it makes sense to answer them in the moment, we will. Otherwise, we'll save the last 10 minutes for all those questions. All right, so everybody should be able to see my screen here. And kind of, this is an interface that we created, specifically for the demo. Kind of the important part that we were looking at here was what's a good interface to show some of the tech and the chat interaction at the same time, given that we have a short amount of time in order to be able to provide this, right? To provide this demo. So one of the things that, I'll try and start off with is this app, what we call our candidates app, is really a way for when we're developing or if we're working with a client to be able to set the rules for how the AI interface should interact with donors, right? So we created this concept of candidates, and you see I've named my candidate BB Dev Days, some candidate notes. This is BB Dev Days candidate. But what we actually did is, we had folks on our staff work on candidates just in preparation for this demo, and really try different rules here. And you can see that these rules are quite complex, and I'm going to step through them in a minute. But really work on, how can we make this interaction more personalized? How do we make sure that the AI experiences and the interactions stay on message, stay on tone, stay on brand, provide salient information? So we create these candidates, and just in this test account from one of our team members here, we can view out, we can see that they have a couple different candidates, and they can switch back and forth, use new candidates. And really you're trying to iteratively and incrementally, as Joe and I like to say, that improve upon this experience over time, right? So you can switch between them. We've done some fun things. I know for myself, I just don't have it here for the demo, but we could add it in. I had it, always respond like a cowboy. I know specifically Joe had one that, was responding like some of his favorite comedians, including like Groucho Marx. So you're just trying to see like, what's the context? Obviously you wouldn't do these things, but you're trying to get a sense of how do these rules interact in the interface, and how do you make one have a higher priority than the other? And sometimes your rules can be in confliction, so you want to work through that. So specifically, I have some notes to go through the rules part of it, and then we'll do kind of the fun part, which is, doing some of that live prompting, right? And I can delete this chat history too, so we can have a fresh conversation as we do that. But on the rules side here, at the top of our candidate instructions, you'll see the first one, which is really identity, right? So this is us trying to provide an identity for the AI to interact with the donor base, right? So an identity, from the context of how we're building out our AI tool, clearly defines the AI's persona, conversational tone. It creates consistent user experiences. It helps guide the model in delivering appropriate donor interactions by setting role-specific boundaries, right? And as you go through the rules and you're setting this context, and this is being injected into the interactions each time, we have key data fields, right? So just for some that are here, an example, right? We can say, hey, this field that comes back from a Sky API call user.firstname, for example, right? We're establishing that that's the donor's first name, right? So we're providing that English-like language context so that as data is responded from a GET request through the Sky APIs, the AI understands what that data is as we inject it into the interface, into the conversation that the donor is having with the AI, right? So the key data fields help establish explicit data fields that the AI can reliably reference, right? It's going to know because we identified the data point, what its name is, what that variable's name is, that it's always their donor first name, right? And obviously they can get more complex and you can bury some of those key data fields. But for demo purposes, we have them at the top because we think they're very important in the context of this demo. They help improve accuracy and reduce misunderstandings for the AI as well. Ensuring that structured and consistent responses by defining, how our Steward AI, which we, colloquially internally refer to as Stew, access and utilize specific backend data points, right? So if somebody says, what's the first name or the last name you have on file for me, you want to reliably know that it's grabbing the right field from all the data that's returned through the API calls and always addressing the donor properly and responsibly. Inside of the basic instructions that we have here, you can see we have a lot of rules here, but just to summarize these, we're setting clear decision-making rules to reduce ambiguity in Stu's recommendations and interactions. We're trying to really focus on having a bunch of clearly defined rules in order to enhance user trust, reliability, prevent incorrect or inappropriate donation suggestions. We want to provide very explicit guidelines on response structure, content. We want to ensure that consistent donor interactions across chats. Many of you on the call have probably worked with ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic. And, sometimes you could ask the same question twice, but you'll get a slightly different response. In the case of creating a gift officer, we want those responses to be a bit more consistent. This framework that really wraps around the whole interface of the question answer flow allows us to provide kind of that explicit structure so that it's generally responding as a virtual gift officer should in the context of our individual tech requirements, but also our clients' business requirements, right? So scrolling down here too, we also have a security section here where we can add some of these rules, right? There are more rules and more structure and more response on some of the back end, but that's more like baseline product, and this is more tailored or personalized experience, right? So we want to, with security, establish clear protective boundaries, prevent users from exposing internal programming or trying to manipulate Stu, right? You have to have those safeguards in place for user privacy. We specifically instruct our AI to decline sensitive or out of scope inquiries. So the conversation should be about your interactions, your donation history, the campaigns and funds that you want to support at the organization. But you wouldn't want your donors coming there and asking your virtual gift officer, Stu, right? Specifically for, chicken recipes, right? Things like that, right? So it's really about making sure that we keep the context and the value proposition of this new channel specific to the org, much like a human gift officer would work with those, high-level donors, high-value donors. So we're ensuring compliance here with these securities, best practices as well, and really just trying to protect both not only the donor information that you have on file. Again, we're mapping and scoping that, so you have a lot of data about your donors in your CRM. It's a subset of that data that we're going to allow Steward AI to interact with for our clients. So we go through a mapping section, figure out what fields, what transaction history, what funds, right? What constituent codes, what should it be able to know about the donor's data inside the CRM in order to drive context and really be a good steward of trying to generate impact stories, success stories, and also make the case for why the donor should have a greater impact by making a successive gift or setting up a recurring gift, right? So in security, that's really what we're trying to focus on in that section. And this is a lot of, I don't want to necessarily say trial and error, but you're iterating on this over and over again, and then re-going through your prompt script to see, like, are my responses getting better? Is the data better utilized? Is it able to calculate giving summaries better because we provide more guidance around math? So those are the types of things that we're doing there. In development opportunities, we're trying to teach, Steward AI the precise strategies for encouraging donor engagement and increased giving through the tailored suggestions. And specifically enhance Stu's overall ability to deliver the personalized impact of storytelling by clearly defining how to interpret and present gift levels, right, to also show the impact of the gift level. Ensure Stu consistently delivers motivating donor conversations that lead to meaningful interactions. And I'll speed up a little bit too here so we can get to kind of some of the prompting. But the last couple here, donation history analysis defines how to interpret that data, that transaction history, especially, these are test records, but for your donors that have been giving a long time, they'll have a lot of history. So putting some rules around what does all of that data mean? How do you calculate it? You can ensure like consistent and accurate communication of tax deductible amounts, making sure it understands the tax years, the calendar year, things like that. Provide clear guidelines for campaign to donation mapping, right? And just move through that one quickly. Creating donation URLs. We have dummy URLs in here for the demo, but specifically it would build your donation URLs, and especially if you're on, say, Blackbaud's Luminate Online product, it could also add in a bunch of URL setters or query string parameters, whatever you want to call them, to help pre-set up the gift level that it's had a conversation with the donor about. So if they've agreed to make a $500 gift because it's going to have the most impact, it sets that donation up in the right way. And then lastly, before I jump over to kind of the live prompt portion of the demo, we just provide some sorts of examples for it, right? So we put in examples of what information exists on my account. Your account details include your name, Bob Smith, your age, your address, right? So we're just providing it some additional context of the types of questions it would be asked over time and how potentially it should craft the natural human language response around that, right? And so while we have a bunch in here, a typical implementation over time after doing the labs and collaborative discovery with the clients, you might even have hundreds or thousands of these interactions as you fine tune how you want the AI interface and channel to function, right? So I'll kick off over with some of the prompting stuff so I can save time for questions. One of the things you can notice right away is that when I deleted the chat history, we basically reinstantiated a new chat window as if you just logged in to, say, your website or your Luminate Online platform, and you're in kind of that donor portal or the member center, or you're in a logged in version of your website, whether that's WordPress, Drupal, or a different CMS. The first thing, and you're used to seeing this because, web bots have been around a long time, is Steward AI will reach out, introduce itself, let you know some of its capabilities, and try and start the conversation, right? As you can see at the very bottom here, I have a toggle for Luminate Online. And when I click that later, it'll just switch us over to Razor's Edge NXT. And just for a demo experience, allowing it to specifically talk with two different systems there, right? So we can see Stu has already said hello to me. This is wired up, by the way, making real-time API calls, so I can ask it, can you show me a summary of all my past donations? So Stu's going to make that API call. It's going to get that key data in, and then it's going to try and format that data into a response, right? So it's going to say, you've made 2 donations, a $5 one to the 2025 Habitat Fund campaign on May 29th, and $500 to Save the Turtles campaign on May 29th as well, right? Again, a test account, but just to show specifically, you can donate to different campaigns, it can respond, we can brand those out differently. So it just gives us some options there. For a donor that has a lot of transaction history. That donor might ask, how much have I given? What's my impact been as well? So you've donated $500 total to Save the Turtle campaign. Every $100 supports one turtle for a year. So your contribution has helped support the care and protection of 5 turtles. Now, what's really cool is we gave it rules, but we didn't tell it what to write back in the response, right? But we are setting up Steward AI to understand that, and every organization has these KPIs that for just about every $100 they receive, they can protect one sea turtle for a year, right? So it can extrapolate based on giving history and show the impact. It can also, make recommendations in order to increase the impact, right? And you can see how you can really build this out to do a lot more, right? So we said, can you recommend a donation amount to increase my impact with the Habitat Fund, right? A donation of $15 would be a bit more meaningful. And if you look at earlier, your past donation was $5 to the Habitat Fund campaign, right? So it's moving you up the ladder, and that's really some of the nascent stewardship that we've programmed into this candidate, right? Is that your goal is to move the donors up the ladder and base it contextually on their previous giving history. And if they don't have any previous giving history, you really want to base it off, those gift arrays that you have on the forms, and it can also consume that data as well. So if we were to ask it a question in that area, and I'm just copying, from some of the prompts that I have, like to make a one-time gift, what are the available giving levels for the Save the Turtles campaign? And it can respond and pull that information from the donation form and say, to make the biggest impact, consider giving $75, right? If you'd like to make even more impact, $150 can support habitat restoration. So specifically, you can do a bunch of different things like that. Just so that we have enough time for questions, I'll ask it as well. Like, Stu, what home address do you have on file for me? It says it doesn't have a home address on file for me, so I can go ahead and put in my home address, right? And ask Stu to go ahead and update my record, right? And so now it's updated, right? And if we go look at that record in Luminate Online, it's made an instant update, right? So using that client-side API to make that call immediately. Again, I will open it up to questions, but then I'll also just in the background do some prompts in RENXT, but a similar flow. You can update your phone number. So all those bio data, it can handle those updates for you in a natural conversation. You can even make that part of its mission, which is to make sure it has the most up-to-date contact information for the donor. And I'll switch over to RENXT as I look to see if we've got any questions here. Bo, specifically, any question you want to call out? I know what I'm sharing here.
Yeah, I might rattle some off real quick. So
Sure.
I've been trying to put them in the Q&A, but one was, what does candidate mean in this context, and how is this different from the agent? Is it the kind of personalization that makes it different, or is it something else?
Yeah, no, that's, I think, a good point. I mean, you can certainly make the case that these entire interactions that we're showing now are actually agentic, right? I mean, what we're trying to do is sometimes maybe different than what the commercial world's doing with agents, in that they're doing something for you as an admin. In this case, it does have some of those same tools. So when we're adding tooling in, that's the ability to communicate with the Sky APIs, right? That's a tooling that this AI can make those agentic requests for you, right? It had a conversation with you as the donor. You said, hey, I don't live in Minnesota anymore. I'm now in California. So specifically, it's able to go and update your address for you through the conversation, and it's using the agentic capabilities, right? The candidates, to answer the question more completely, are really around, setting the guidelines, the tone, how it interacts, how it communicates, what is the AI's goal in the conversation with the donor or the prospect, right? Which is get them to make a successive gift, get them to become a donor, et cetera. That's what those rules are around. But it does have the agentic capabilities to make updates on your behalf, as well as get your donation history.
No, that's good, and you have some very specific rules, some very specific training in there that's different than a general agent.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
just a question, and I'll kind of join a couple of these together. Jeremy had a good question. How do you make sure that a model update from OpenAI doesn't change how your candidate works?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And OpenAI is actually the current platform that we're using here, but they allow us to version, right? So we can stay on a specific version. So if they launch, let's say 4.2 tomorrow, right? We can still be set to a subversion of 4.0, let's say, but we don't necessarily have to move to 4.2 or a minor version, right? So major and minor versions we can lock in. When those new models come out, if they're depending on each of those models, as you know, has different purposes. Some are for deep research, some are for advanced reasoning, some are for codex and coding. But if there's a model that comes out that we think will be better for what we're doing here, interacting with people in a writing and agentic capability, we will start to try that, right? So we'd have candidates trying a new feature branch where we're using a new OpenAI model. But we don't have to worry about it because OpenAI is kind of taking care of the developer community to say the model you're using you can continue to use even if you no longer see it in the ChatGPT interface until that goes end of life. So we're not necessarily forced to new models or updates. So
Gotcha.
it allows you to
That's
harden your
good to know.
yeah.
And then just a couple other questions in here. How does it authenticate or verify the constituent? Is the constituent logging in, or how does it know
Yeah.
who it's talking to?
Yeah, I see that question there from Wesley. So specifically, let's say we're talking about the Luminate Online environment, right? Luminate Online provides a way for donors to log in, so we tap into that. So we're able to work with the authentication APIs in Luminate Online and verify that you have established your session successfully in Luminate Online, and then we ask Luminate Online to provide back your Luminate Cons ID. In RENXT, we're really working with your website provider, right? So you can have a user management in your website for the logged in portion of your website, and when we can authenticate that way. If you don't do that currently on your website or you have some other restriction, we can also have it authenticate you kind of with third-party methods. So for example, if you've got their phone number on file, right, we can send a text message to them, authenticate that they have access to that phone, then follow it up with an email. So you can kind of have those two factors to authenticate is one methodology. But typically we build a user model around either their website or some other online web property that they have, or identity service provider that the organization's using. In both cases, you kind of have multiple options and capabilities. On the AWS platform as well, there's tools that we can build out to create that user authentication model and kind of sync those records in from Razor's Edge NXT and build usernames and passwords for them. So if they do say, hey, I'm Bo Crater, we know Bo Crater's email address. We can send him information, set up his account, reset his password, etc. So we can provide that authentication. And then we manage it kind of in the Steward AI app, a logical portion. We make sure they're authenticated, and then we still scope the conversation specific to the donor. So they can only see things about their RE Cons ID record.
And that was another question. So that addresses how you can make sure the candidate's only accessing that constituent's record. You have an authentication mechanism.
That's right.
But what about you on your end? Do you have a way you can review transcripts? Do you have a way to kind of Q&A and have visibility into how well the model is doing?
Yeah, so that's something that Joe and I and the rest of the team talk about regularly in terms of tracking success. Every org that sets one of these up may have different purposes. They may not necessarily all be about stewardship, but in stewardship, and when you're trying to get Steward AI to successfully convert people to successive donors or sustaining donors, right? One of the things we can do when we're building out those links, right, to the donation forms is we set source and subsource parameters. So transactionally, we have a record that this donor clicked through from a link that Steward AI set up. So Stu created this link, and then it's transactionally on the record, but it's also picked up by your Google Analytics or your Adobe Analytics. So you'll see that in the report. You'll see the traffic came from Stu specifically. So that's one way for us to track success, is that if the goal is to increase donors, right, we can see how much traffic is driven to donation forms after an interaction with Stu. We can see how many successfully convert to a donation, whether that's one time, recurring, etc. And then for us as well, we look at the length of the conversation, right? So we want them to have a bit longer conversations. So over time, you're doing that progression of, are they having longer and longer conversations, the donor base as a whole with Stu? And that means we're making, the value proposition a lot better, not only for the organization, but for the donor, because they're getting more information, they're getting their pieces handled. We see people, building out now just the ability to kick off the end of your email receipt from the chat conversation. So I'm sure, in our member centers today, they can log in and download this, but we can make it even easier and have AI point the way.
And so you have a good bit of confidence that the tool is going to be accurate. The way you kind of structure the rules reduces the hallucination risk, which I think is the biggest concern. So, and then last couple questions here. I know we're right at time, but so there's a full record of the conversation for review. It sounds like the answer is yes.
Yes, yeah. So I have the button here just for demo purposes that I can log my chat summary. So we have the AI tools, right? Everyone knows AI tools are great at summarizing data and conversations. So we have it summarize the full length of the conversation, store that, and say in Luminate Online, we create a custom interaction type called, Steward AI conversation, right? And then we can store up to, I think, 1,000 characters in there. So we summarize it up to 1,000 characters. But then the next time you have a conversation with the AI, not only is it great that the admins can view that conversation summary if you want them to be able to do that, that's totally up to you. Obviously, it's all contextualized for donations. But the AI can pull in the previous conversation so it retains the context with the donor, right?
Very cool.
So it knows last time you were talking about making a gift to the water campaign. Now it knows you made a gift to the clean water campaign. So it can have a conversation about the impact you're having, right?
Great.
So specifically, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say last two questions, and I think good ones to, wrap up on. How long does this take to set up or build? And then Pam was asking, so Pollyanna asked that. Pam was asking, where do we find pricing? So how can an organization get started with this?
Yeah, so obviously you have a nice, beautiful chat window. Your donors would never see the candidate view. This is just for a DevCon demo. But specifically, one of the things we're doing, our email address is available in the session, follow out. But reach out. We are asking people to, if they want to join our list, so our wait list. So there does take some time to get people onboarded and set up. But really you go live kind of quickly to answer your question. So once we start out, there's an implementation process. We start working on the candidates together. What are the goals? What do you want it to communicate with? What's the demographics of your audience, right? But somewhere in that 4 to 8 week timeline, you get your first candidate out. We present that to 10% of the donors. We learn from that. We improve on these candidates until we release it to the wider group. But we really want to try and get it in front of the donor base once we're happy with a candidate as soon as possible. And then really on the pricing side, we obviously have a few different options, but it's really a consumption model. Every AI interaction has a cost to it. So we're able to provide some of that pricing, and it's really based, what's the traffic like, right? So it's certainly an affordable solution if people want to learn more and email us. And we will be adding this right as an offering in the Blackbaud marketplace. So you'll see that come out this summer. So it'll be easy to add to. But if you want to get early on the list and be one of the interested parties right away, feel free to reach out, and happy to add you to that list.
Fantastic. And we're up here on time. I think we're going to lose some folks here in a minute, but Carl, Joe, anything else you'd like to show or share?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically, we're always popping new information in here, asking you what kind of impact the gifts have, playing with how it reaches out. If you're already a donor that's been donating a lot, maybe we should have Stu reach out and just talk about the impact you had first and open up the conversation about impact before it makes a suggestion to double your impact, right? So, but no, lots to share. Joe's done a great job leading the team here, building this out. And, as the clients are getting involved, they're coming up with all new ideas. I mean, that's why we love these sessions and the questions.
Yeah, and I love these because once you get this in place, it opens up a lot of other opportunities, not just those kind of self-service and upgrade, upsell
Oh,
that you
100%.
focused
Yeah.
on today. So
You could say, hey, you have a $50 recurring gift. Would you like me to increase that to 60? And that's completed right, within that chat interface just through your conversation, right? And it allows you to move your impact up 20% just in a conversation, right? So then we can track that as success, right? Being able to pull in all your recurring commitments from NXT or your recurring payments from Luminate Online. All right. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's great to share it with you. And if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to DEF CON. There's obviously a survey, fill that out, and we'll get back to anyone with any additional questions you think of.
great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Carl. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Bob.
it.
Appreciate it. Thank
All
you,
right.
Buck.
Good session.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.